but 80% of the suicides that happened last year in America, they were all men. Which suggests that there's a real issue in business. However, if it has gotten to a space or to a point where you can't even relax without thinking about this business, you can't go to sleep. You're waking up out of your sleep because you're thinking about the business. That's not healthy. So I think employers need to ask their employees, what does it look like for this space to be safe?
Quentin, good to have you on the podcast. You're a man of many things. You're a therapist, you're a TV personality, you are a host, you're a bunch of things. But today we're going to specifically talk about, and we're going to speak to the therapist today. We really need to look after our mental health, right? So enough of me talking. Quentin, take it away. You just tell our audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you reaching out and just creating a space for the topic. So you kind of summed it up already in what I do. I tell people I'm just doing what the Lord is allowing me to do.
Right.
And I'm grateful because growing up, I think you hear, or at least I heard, and I'm pretty sure this is other people's experience, you need to find one thing and just do that. And there is some wisdom into mastering a particular craft. But I'm a person that there are many things I want to do, and I've just been blessed to be able to operate in different spaces. So, yes, I am a therapist, which is 100% a calling that I even had to work to get to, working through imposter syndrome. I went to school 10 years ago, undergrad and master's in social work, to become a therapist. And then I graduated and I chose not to become a therapist because I had this idea of what a therapist was. And that was this old white guy that had these technical clinical skills. And when I looked in the mirror, it didn't match up to that. And so, 10 years later, the Lord brought it back around in a way. And I'm walking in that thing and I love it. I love it not only because I get to, I don't believe that I'm anyone's savior, Jesus alone, but what I can do is be a guide, and I can help people think about the way they think. I can help people identify patterns that they operate in. I can help people look back on the systems of their life, meaning how they were raised, the environment they were in, that may give us indication as to why you act the way you act. If it is in here's a clinical term, a maladaptive way, which is just a highfalutin way of saying bad actions, right?
Yes.
And if you want to do something about that, right? I don't even press changing behaviors because again, I can't save. But what I can do is present to you what it is displaying and how it is affecting you. And then we just work through, do we want to change it and figure out skills and coping strategies to do certain things. So really blessed. I really feel myself as being blessed to be able to be a guide to people in the role of a therapist. Also a media personality. I've done some work in TV. I've done a reality competition show called The Traders, season 1 on Peacock, streaming giant for NBC. And we won an Emmy, which is crazy. So we were season 1 out the gate. And that is I don't even know how much time we have. That's a story within its own about just doing reality TV and also listening to God, because there is a moment I listened to him the entire time, and there's a moment at the end of the show, I make it to all 10 episodes, where I disobeyed, and the consequences showed themselves at the end of that show. That's a whole, I know we're not here to talk about that, but that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, so I do that. I do TV. I talk politics as a political analyst and commentator, and have been blessed to be on national syndicated news talk shows, local stations here in Houston, Texas. And so I do that, and I'm a host. I host events. Most recently, I hosted it really wasn't a church event, but church-esque event. About 3,500 people in attendance. Really dope, really great opportunity. But it's just another way in which I can use my personality to help people in that space. Really, just helping them have fun. Kind of be more relaxed, but still pointing people back to Christ, and then moving along the show. So those are some of the things that I do. That I love to do, but ultimately my calling, the thing I'm most passionate about, is being a therapist.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I took this off your website, found this on your website. You have a quote that says, I'm going to quote you. It says, we get one life and we should run towards every dream that we have. The question is, will you run with me? And so today, sir, we're going to run with you, the
Okay.
therapist.
Run with me.
Mental health, whether male or female, is something that's very serious. It's become one of those things it's I guess it's in the last 10 years or so, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is sort of like heightened now. The
Yes.
awareness has heightened. So today specifically, I want us to speak to the men and men in business, and how we can help each other, how we can help ourselves to be not only be successful but success is not just in the money that we can make.
Right.
You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. I mean, we can go as far, if you don't have Jesus, you don't have anything. But
Period.
we're speaking specifically about health
Yeah.
today, and your mental health. If you can just explain in a unique way, what are some of the challenges that we face, as with mental health and in
Yeah.
business,
Specifically for men.
specifically for men.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the things just in general, and then I'll kind of niche it down, but let me start kind of larger, that men face is really anxiety and depression. But it shows up in a way in which I don't think a lot of people have come to understand the diagnosis, right? So when I say depression, most men that I talk to, and mind you, 70% of my clients right now that I work with are men. But most men, when I say depressed, like you may be depressed, he don't cry, right? Or I'm not always sad. And that is not a wrong interpretation of depression. It's just now that we've studied it more in men, we see that sadness is not the only way that depression shows up in men. Sometimes depression shows up in men in extreme irritability and anger. That sound a little bit more familiar?
It does.
Right. And so when we peel back the layers to what men are actually their daily experiences and the things that they have gone through and the things that they are going through in life, and then particularly in business, which creates its own set of challenges, because if you're the business owner, the success and the fail of the company theoretically lays at your feet, right? And in business, unlike a traditional 9 to 5 job, you eat what you kill. So if you don't go out there and get it, there is no money coming in the door, which then means, got a little tongue tied there, which then means finances are affected, right? And when a man's finances are affected, it affects his mood, his mental,
Yes.
right? Sometimes, particularly with depression, it shows up in a way in which that in emotions that are typically ascribed to men that are okay to have, such as anger, anxiety, not really being able to concentrate, or not being able to not focus on a thing. So when we talk about business, because the success and the failure lays at that man's feet, one could think that, okay, I'm always thinking about my business, as I should be. And to a certain extent, you should be, right? Because you are the success or the failure of the business. However, if it has gotten to a space or to a point where you can't even relax without thinking about this business, you can't go to sleep, you're waking up out of your sleep because you're thinking about the business, that's not healthy. The mantra that I think we've heard over a while is, you can sleep when you're dead, or, I got to put 16, 18-hour days into my business. It's not necessarily healthy. You can do it, and maybe it leads to some success, and maybe it doesn't, because you burn out and crash because you're not taking care of yourself. And when you're not taking care of yourself, it affects your mental health. So if you're working 16 to 18-hour days, well, there are 24 hours in a day. When do you sleep? We know that when you don't have healthy sleep, which is on average 8 hours a day, I'm not saying it has to be at night. Really, with my clients, I'm not even ever really asking them, are you sleeping 8 hours at night? I'm asking, are you sleeping 8 hours consistently anywhere in the day? Because that's what you need. So that your body can re-regulate, so that your hormones can actually regulate, so that your body can break down the food that you ate, if you ate that day, because you're working so
True,
hard,
true.
right?
Yes.
So some of these things, some of these mental health things like anxiety and depression, people already have a propensity to have them based off of their lived experience, but then some men have a tendency of creating the diagnosis for themselves because the way in which they work in their business, because they're not taking care of themselves, which then leads to the anxiety and the depression. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And, I can totally relate to a lot of what you're saying because I myself have experienced depression and anxiety, mental health issues that did impact my business and overall, generally speaking, my life. And, and it was rough. It was rough. A lot of it for me, I would say, had to do with just the lifestyle and those relationship that I was in, and those people that I had around me, and failures that I had experienced. I think I was taking that on and leaving it on my shoulder. I was trying to figure things out, and things were, although I was experiencing success, I was also experiencing failure at the same time. So I don't know if that makes sense, that I was really struggling with that, that in between.
Yeah. I would imagine, and please don't let me put words in your mouth, but I would imagine there may have been some feelings maybe of being a fraud.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
How am I experiencing so much success over here, but then this is going down? Something's not right, and it must be me. Right.
Absolutely.
Which probably I would imagine again, and I'm not your therapist. I'm just just talking.
Yes.
That it exacerbated or contributed to the anxiety even more.
Yes.
But trying to reckon why these two things are happening. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did for sure, and that came out in when I did go to seek counseling and therapy for these things. So and it was an eye opener, big time, for me, and I felt a sense of freedom, and I wasn't taking care of myself.
Yeah,
I had to take care of I had to look out for me. A lot of it had to deal with my childhood, my upbringing. But then once I let that go, I felt a sense of freedom. And on top of it, I can't lie, that a lot of it had to do with my faith too, coming back into, my relationship with God, and that peace, that inner peace that I found, that even when I go through things, we go through things differently. That's the way I like to put it.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad that I'm glad you found a competent therapist that could walk you through that, right? So that you could get to that level of understanding and then make a choice about it. Because you could have chosen to still operate the same way. Just because you went to therapy and you figured it out doesn't mean you actually wanted to implement change. Right. So the fact that you did implement change, and now what it sounds like is on the other side of that, you can see it a little bit clearer. And now when you go through situations that may be negative or that may be very opposite, right? You may be high over here and low over here. You know how to weather that storm a little bit better.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Tell me, what recommendations do you give, would you say, to help men to prevent burnout?
Oh man,
stress.
That is so good, because men have a tendency so we're workers, built in.
Yes,
we're workers, right? Most of us are workers. Sorry, so a few crossed my mind. I was like, well, are workers, and so a lot of times, what I find that men kind of work until they hit a wall, right?
Yeah.
So what I really like to do, particularly in intake sessions, is ask, what are some things that you do for fun? Just period. Like, what's fun to you? And sometimes, there are lists of things. Some men know what they like to do for fun. Some men may respond with, well, I used to do this. It's been, so long since I've been able to, for whatever reason. Like, I got married and then I had a kid, right? Like, all these life moments happen that kind of, I don't want to say took them off course, but it changed the course of how they live their lives, right? And so it's been difficult to re-implement the fun back in their lives. So I try to help men identify what things are fun to them, and then what things are ideas of fun that they've not yet done, right? And so then maybe we start implementing schedules where we do a fun thing, and then we also do a new thing that we think may be fun, because we don't know if it will be or not. We just have an idea about it. And that's actually self-care. And so uh, also deducing, like, is this something that you want to do alone? Is this something that you want to do with friends? If you're married, do you want to do it with your wife? If you have kids, do you want to do it with the kids? Do you want to do, like, what in a perfect world with your life the way it is, this fun thing, who do you want to do it with? Right. And so sometimes it's really just about asking the right questions and breaking down what's in a man's head and then giving it back to him so that he then can decide how he wants to implement it. Now, some men do this better than others. And then some, I kind of have to help create a schedule for them. Right.
Yeah.
Or let me rephrase that, because I'm not going to do it for them. Do it with them.
With them. Yeah.
Because when the session is over, I'm going back to my life. You got to go back to it.
That's right.
So that's some of the things that we do. We start there. Then as time goes on, I may get into, okay, what are some things that relaxes you? I typically won't come out of the gate with that because, one, a lot of men struggle with just relaxing. Some men, their idea of relaxing is just doing nothing, which is true, but that may not also work for every lifestyle. And so I just find that I have way more buy-in when I bring out, like, what's fun? What's fun to you, right? Talk to the little boy in the man, right? Because everyone enjoyed, for the most part, boyish activities, when they were younger. So how do we translate and bring that into manhood activities? And it is just a process. So then we try to figure out, like, what is relaxing to them? Again, same questions. Who do you want to do that with? Is this a solo thing, a group thing, a spouse thing, a child thing? And we build it in so that he can begin to create a little more balance in his life so that he can begin to start doing things that he actually likes doing.
Nice. Yeah. Would you say that women understand self-care more than men?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. That does not mean that they don't struggle. I do have some women on my roster where one in particular, I mean, I could ascribe that like business work that I could ascribe to a man. She has that.
Yeah.
So there has been work trying to get her to a space where it's like, okay, sis, we need to rest.
You need to chill.
Need to reset. But I do find that women understand the concept a lot more. But I also think, at the risk of sounding sexist, which I'm not trying to be, I also think that there are certain pressures, societal pressures, family structural pressures that women don't experience that men do, depending on their context, right? Depending on their ethnicity, their religion, socioeconomic status. There are certain things that kind of cut across a lot of those lines that men in general experience that women don't.
Right.
And so I think that may have something to do with women understanding a little bit more, or having more mental space to understand that I need to take care of myself, as opposed to men, where I think our brains and just the way in which we've been socialized, particularly here in America, but the way we've been socialized to kind of work. My value is really only in the things that I provide, not who I am. Whereas women have been socialized in a way to understand that their value comes from who they are, not what they provide.
That's
now,
powerful.
There's some red pill community 50-50. I'm not going to go into all of that on its head.
Yeah.
But I think it's the way in which men and women have been socialized to where women understand that them being who they are is what is contributed to the family or what is contributed to this partnership. Whereas a man has been socialized to think what I provide is the thing that's beneficial to the family and to the relationship, as opposed to who I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I was reading a stat recently that said, I'm Canadian, so in Canada, so they said in Canada, I think it was a stat last year, that said 4,500 people committed suicide. That's a lot. That's a high number. But the most vulnerable demographic are men that are between the ages of 40 and 59. I don't know if you have any stats that you can share with me from the U.S., but that is high, and I sit between that 40 to 59 age group. Do you experience that? Like, have you worked with, or do you work with clients that kind of are there?
Yeah, the interesting thing. So yes, and the clients that I'm currently working with, those that have suicidal ideation or have even attempted uh, attempted to unalive themselves, kind of run the gamut age wise, honestly. Which is, and I mean, as young as 14 that I have right now. So it kind of runs the gambit. I would say here in America last year, I think it was last year, about 80% of the suicides that took place were committed by men. Excuse me, were that they yes. I'm trying not to use there's a word, we don't use the word committed anymore, so I'm trying to take it out of my language, so it slipped out, excuse me. But 80% of the suicides that happened last year in America, they were all men, which suggests that there's a real issue. Yes, I think that men have a tendency to isolate when they're actually having real issues, because again, going back to that socialization piece of, I'm the provider and I'm supposed to be the protector, and if that's the case, I have to be the strong one. And yes, sure, that's true. We're not going to take anything away from that. That is true. At the same time, no one can be strong all the time. Right? No one can be strong all the time. And so when a man believes or feels that there's no other outlet, or feeling trapped in that role that I have to always be strong, and even though I'm really going through something, right? Even though my mental is not right, I can't sleep. I'm either always angry or I'm always sad. I'm crying and nobody sees it. You know what I'm saying? Or I'm having these racing thoughts that I just cannot get out of my head. I can't break out of the thoughts. And I look up and it's an hour later and I'm still thinking about it. Or I'm having panic attacks because I'm thinking about a particular situation, whether it's my business, right, or my family. Men have a tendency to isolate. And that's probably the most dangerous things a person can do when they're having mental health issues, when they're having some struggle. Because the mind will do what it wants to do. It will continue to run down a rabbit hole if it is allowed to do so. Outside of the spiritual component, right, that is also attached there, but the mind will continue to do that. And so when that's really one of the warning signs to watch out for. Like if there is a man that either has anxiety or depression, or if you're not really quite sure, but they're extremely irritable, again, or the sadness, the always feeling down, the panic attacks, all of those things, when they begin to isolate, that's really a warning sign that the people around them should really kind of dig in a little bit more, like move closer, and don't allow them to fully isolate. Obviously, you want to be respectful of people's space if they don't want to be bothered. There is a line there, right, of being respectful. But when you notice that a person is isolating, that is what typically is leading to the suicidal ideation, which is just thinking about suicide, right? And then from there, a person attempting to unalive themselves.
I'd also like to add to that. You can build on this for me, that we're so busy and we're living in such a chaotic world now that we don't listen to each other. Hey bro, how you doing? I'm good. I actually put that to the test, Quentin, one day. I actually said, somebody asked me how I was doing. I said, horrible, man. And they're like, all right, cool. And they literally went on with the conversation. They didn't hear her. And they didn't actually hear me say I'm horrible. Now I just said that just for the sake of saying it, but we don't listen to each other. And I think that's really important, that we need to really take time to listen to one another, take time to spend time, hang out with each other, and but listening. Not every time things come out of one's mouth is literally, well, I guess, what comes out of a person's mouth is what's in their heart. The Bible speaks about that, right? So, but we're not really listening.
Yeah, I would. I don't agree in a form of an indictment of people, because I understand that people have a lot. They just have a lot going on, and that, hey, how you doing? Fine, tree. We have not really we don't really mean how are you doing. We're just speaking. It's a greeting. It's a pleasantry, right? So I don't use it as I don't agree in an indictment way because I understand that that's how we've used it. But I do agree that we should try to make a conscious effort to listen, and when you actually ask that, you actually receive what the person is saying. But then also encourage the person to be honest about if something's actually going on.
Yes.
Right? Because I said it myself. Somebody asked me, how you doing? I'm good. You know, it could be falling apart in the background, but it's just that is my normal response. Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Right.
You know, we're just bantering. I also think that not every interaction is it wise to then tell everything that you got going on to the person that.
Right.
So it depends on who's asking you too, right?
That's
so
right.
I think what's probably more beneficial is something that you said is in cultivating the relationships that you do have, the people that you actually do trust, and in those circles, make sure you're actually listening to the person that's in your tribe. So yeah.
Yeah. What recommendations would you give to employers, business folks to set up a culture that's safe and and to support people with mental health issue?
Oh, that's good. You can definitely start having conversations about like what does it look like to have a safe environment. I think a lot of times when we try to create the environment for our employers or employees or just the company, a lot of times you're not asking the people that it actually impacts, right? So let me give an example that's not really an employer or employee, but in a way it is mom and son, right? Mom is the employer.
Yes.
Son is the worker. Well, I had a session with a mom and son probably 3 weeks ago. Son has had suicidal attempts, right? We're talking through all the things, and mom asks me, what are some ways I can just be there for him, when he's having these moments. Now he's sitting right there. But she's asking me. So I asked her to ask him.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give you ways, but what if what I have doesn't work for him?
Right.
So let's ask him because he's the one that's impacted. So he gives his response. Mom receives it, has to do some own work because she heard what he said, but then she also heard the inverse of what he said. Well, if he's saying this is what he needs, I probably have not been giving that because he's not been coming to me. Okay, well, maybe that's some work you got to do. You know what I'm saying? But the point is, ask the person that is impacted that you're also trying to cultivate the environment for. So I think employers need to ask their employees, what does it look like for this space to be safe? What do you need? Like, and because we're talking about employment or we're talking about business, what do you need for it to be safe? But at the same time, understanding that this is a business, it's not a friend group.
Right.
It's not a family group. As much as I want to say we're family, we're not family. We're at work. Everybody's here to do a job and then to get a check.
Yes.
Now, I may be here for some years, but we're not family.
Right.
We're co-workers and you're the boss. So what does it mean for it to be safe? What does it mean for me to be able to, share that I have, I may be having some mental health issues? What does it mean for the company to be able to provide a certain level of help? But what does that also mean in the context that this is a place of business as well? And have the discussion and let your employees tell you what they need. I'm not saying that you adopt everything, but now you have at least brought in the people that are impacted and that you're trying to shape and mold this space for.
That leaders, business owners are mindful of this and making sure that, because at the same time, it's a business. We're not family. It's a business. But it's important, just like in I like your analogy there. It is as parents, our job as parents is to guide and to put certain things into place so that our children can move forward strong and on their own, right, as they move off and start their own business.
Correct.
Called family.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Ask the people that are impacted. It's also, not to go political as well. What one should be doing, politicians, asking the people that sent you to office, what do they need? how can you make laws, or how can you impose laws on people if you don't know what they actually need, if that's the real purpose that you're there? That's a whole nother conversation.
That's
But you
right.
understand, it's the same thing. Who are the people impacted? Talk to the people that are impacted and find out what they need, and that is how you implement the things that they need, along with what you need for your business. To me, it's really quite simple, but I think that, I think that we have to do a better job of sharing the mic, because that is a part of it. Being understanding that as the leader, as the business owner, we're not the end all be all. Now, we may be the end all be all in the decision making, but we don't have all the wisdom and all the knowledge for every single thing.
Right.
Right? If
That's
that
right.
was the case, what is part of the purpose of hiring people? Not part of, certain freedom to all the things, but if you knew how to do everything, you would just do everything. So we have to learn to start sharing the mic, to give voice to those people, so that it can influence our decision making, so that as we call the shots, as we still chart the path forward for the company, we are bringing those people along. So not only will they feel included, but we're also providing them the things that they need, so that they then in turn continue to work for us, so then we can continue to make a profit. Right? It's all of this. It's really a circle, but
makes sense. Yeah.
Some people see their dollar as the most important thing, and they just go for that.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it works, but I know the sometimes that structure, or that the morale, if you will, that's the word I'm looking for, may not be the best. So
yeah, makes sense. I like that. It's powerful. Share the mic.
Yeah,
I like that. That's powerful. Yeah, give others voice. Hey, Quentin, can you tell me, share any success stories of men that you know, probably without getting too deep into anything, that have overcome their mental health challenges, and they're thriving in their business?
A client in particular that just crossed my mind. So when this guy came to me, he had extreme anxiety. He's a business owner, but he was dealing with some extreme anxiety. And so one thing that I can appreciate about this client is he came into session willing to do the work. What I mean by that is he really didn't hold back once we started. So I asked a question. It wasn't like a lot of pulling teeth trying to get him to, tell me the answer. Or, if I asked him something, that was traumatic about his past, he would tell me. Now, there was this one particular thing I subsequently learned, maybe 2 months after us working together, there was this one thing in his past that was bothering him, and he wasn't quite ready to, talk about it. But for the most part, he was willing to. He came in every week. He would, listen to what I had to say. He would also contribute what he had to say and what he thought. And I think that it took us a while, but it moved a lot quicker than I've seen in other male clients, because he was. I think there was a level of trust that he had with me that he felt. And you've been in therapy. So I would imagine been in therapy. I'm a therapist that currently has a therapist. So, there is a level of trust you want to make sure you have with this person. Like, can I really tell you this? Should I tell you these things? So he comes in, he does the work. We finally get to the big secret that's in the back. We talk about it, we deal with it, we unpack it, we figure out, is the way he's been thinking about this thing so long, is it based in reality? Or has he created a narrative around it that's actually not true? That has been causing stress
and
for
anxiety
these 20 plus years. And so once we figured out what was what, so every week I also do a check-in. What's the anxiety like? How are you sleeping? If you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm always doing these checks just to see what is it. So once we do that, and if I might say as well, once we do that, but we also gave up porn watching and masturbation. That was one of the things that was contributing to the anxiety symptoms that he didn't know, that he didn't realize. So once we gave that up, and then once we actually didn't even really get to start talking about the big deep down secret until we were weeks into giving up the porn and masturbation, which is a word there. Now he is able to assess the situation more clearer.
Nice.
He is not creating realities around things that are not there. He is not taking on other people's ideas and expectations of himself, and he's just taking on the expectations he has for himself.
Wow, that's powerful.
Which has severely decreased the anxiety he was experiencing when he first got with me. So I say that to say he's also I said he's a business owner. He has not scaled to the level that he wants to be at, but now that we've removed the roadblocks of the imposter syndrome, and we've removed the thing that was causing a lot of the anxiety and all of that, when he's coming back to session now, and I'm hearing about what he's doing in his business, he sounds a lot more functional.
Yes.
And he's being a lot more productive. So he may not have reached the spot he wants to reach, but he's doing a whole lot more work to get there than he was when he first started sessions with me.
Yeah. That's success in itself.
Correct.
Big time.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's a powerful testimony. That's amazing.
Yes.
Wow, that is awesome. That's awesome. Wow, this is wonderful. Quentin, tell our audience, where can they find? Well, actually, let me ask you this: are you taking on new clients, sir?
I am. I actually just decided last week to open up my schedule a little bit more.
Okay.
I did have it limited, but I decided that I'm going to open it up a little bit more, shift some things around. So yeah, I think right now I have availability for maybe 4 to 5 more clients in this current time that would, that way, because what I don't want to do is overburden myself to where no one is getting quality care.
Yes.
So I'm very cognizant of how many clients I currently have and the rotation. And so since some of those clients, like, the success client that I just told you about, that person, he's not leaving. However, he may not need to see me every week anymore.
Right, as often, yes.
Right. So as clients transition at their own rate of success, okay, there's no point in it, because at a certain point, now we're just talking just for the sake of talking, which I'm not interested in a therapy aspect.
Right.
Now, we on the street just shooting it, that's different. So I have some clients that are maturing through the process. Some of them have moved to every 3 weeks. Some of them have moved to every other week, which then gives me availability to start seeing new clients where I typically see them once a week.
Right.
Until we get to a space where it's like, okay, this once a week is no longer necessary. So yes, in a long way of saying, yes, I have some availability for about 4 to 5 new clients right now.
All right. And you do virtual sessions? Because I know since COVID, that's been a big thing.
Oh yeah. I'm 100% virtual. That COVID knocked some therapists over the head. Obviously, there was great destruction to people's lives.
Yes.
As far as death and sickness. But if we're talking about in a therapy space, you had therapists who lost a lot of money because they had brick and mortar in-person practice.
Right.
And so if you can't see people in person and they didn't have the infrastructure to go virtual, they were stuck with those bills. So a lot of therapists have just opted, you know what, we're just going to be 100% virtual just in case this happens again, because a lot of therapists, they're probably still paying off some of those bills. Now, being virtual, you can counsel anyone around the world. It's not limited to just those in your community. So that's not 100% accurate. So Texas has state laws that we have to. So it depends on where you're licensed, right? And what is your licensing board?
Okay. Yeah.
So Texas has a strict if you're licensed in Texas, you need to see clients in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then we have about 7 or 8 states. They have and to be clear, so I'm a social worker. So under my social work licensure board, there are a few ways you can become a therapist. So some people are LPC, they have their own board. Some people are LMFT, which is licensed marriage and family therapists. They have their own board. Some people are psychologists. They have their your board says you can do for your license. So for me in Texas with a social work license, they want us to only see people in Texas. Now, I am licensed in other states that have they don't have the same rules as Texas, but however, I'm not licensed to be a therapist in those states just yet.
Gotcha. Right.
So by the end of next year,
Yeah.
then we'll be cooking with a little bit more grease.
All right.
So we're talking about therapy. There's strict guidelines. Now, if we're talking about life coaching, which is not something that I'm actually doing right now. We've been talking about it. That then there is no licensing board for that, right? And
yes, exactly.
I would still be governed by my board no matter what I'm doing. But in that aspect, if I'm like, hey, okay, I'm just going to do life coaching, I'm not really going to do therapy, so we're not doing clinical therapeutic modalities,
right?
Then the world is my oyster. Whatever. But yeah. So that's where I am right now.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I just assumed that everybody can work anywhere. Yeah, that's good. So people can find you on where? Instagram? Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, 100%. So you can find me on Instagram at Quentin R Jiles, QUENTIN R as in rabbit, JILES. You can also find me on my website, www.quentinrgiles.com. Those are probably the two best ways. I'm on other social platforms, but those are the two
best ways. All right, that's awesome. And I'm going to put that into the show notes anyways. So those of you that will be listening to this on whatever your favorite platform, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and other ones that this podcast will be on, it'll be there for you that you can grab that. And if you want to reach out to Quentin, this man is powerful. This man is energetic. And lots of knowledge. Quentin, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. And as we talked off before we jumped on, the expectation is that this will touch someone's life somewhere, whether now or even years to come. We feel that as both, men of God, we feel that our calling is to change and impact and empower lives in a positive way. That's what we're here for. That's our assignments. Yeah. So thank you again for your time.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.